Imagine a football match so intense that it ignited a war between two countries. Sounds unbelievable, right? Yet in 1969, this very scenario unfolded between El Salvador and Honduras. A simple World Cup qualifier turned into a deadly conflict, now known as the Football War. But was it really just about the game? Today we'll uncover the truth behind this astonishing event. A tale where sports, politics, and human emotions collided with devastating consequences. Long before the first whistle blew on the football field, tensions between El Salvador and Honduras were already simmering. El Salvador, a tiny nation with a rapidly growing population, was struggling to find enough land for its people. The solution? Thousands of Salvadorans crossed the border into Honduras, seeking new opportunities. For many, it was a chance to start fresh, but their arrival sparked resentment among Hondurans. The newcomers were often seen as intruders, taking over land and jobs that the locals desperately needed. The Salvadoran immigrants built new lives, but their presence fueled a growing anger in Honduras. As the number of immigrants increased, so did the hostility. Hondurans began to see them as a threat to their own livelihoods, and nationalist sentiments started to boil over. June 1969. The World Cup qualifiers were supposed to be a celebration of sports, but for El Salvador and Honduras, they became a battleground. The first match was held in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. The Salvadoran team arrived to a hostile reception. Honduran fans kept them awake all night, shouting and banging on drums outside their hotel. By the time the game started, the Salvadoran players were exhausted. Honduras won 1-0, but the victory did nothing to calm the storm. Instead, it only made things worse. The return match in San Salvador was charged with tension. The Salvadoran fans were determined to avenge their team's defeat. The Honduran players faced the same tactics that had been used against the Salvadorans. Their hotel was surrounded by angry mobs, making sleep impossible. When the game kicked off, the atmosphere in the stadium was electric, but also dangerous. El Salvador won decisively, 3-0, but the victory on the field was overshadowed by the violence that followed. Riots broke out, and the animosity between the two nations reached a boiling point. What started as a football match quickly escalated into a national crisis, showing how easily sports can become entangled with deeper, darker issues. Before we dive into the explosive events that followed, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We bring you fascinating stories from history that you won't find in your textbooks. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. On July 14, 1969, the simmering tensions boiled over. El Salvador launched a surprise military attack on Honduras, marking the start of what would become known as the Football War. The Salvadoran forces, though smaller and less equipped, were highly motivated. They believed they were defending their nation's honor, and this gave them the courage to strike hard and fast. They quickly advanced into Honduran territory, catching the Honduran military off guard. The war was short but intense. Both sides fought with outdated weapons and aircraft from World War II, giving the conflict an almost surreal quality. In the air, dogfights between ancient planes seemed like something out of a history book. On the ground, the fighting was brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Salvadoran troops pushed deep into Honduras, but their progress soon slowed as the Hondurans regrouped and mounted a fierce resistance. The war was a vivid reminder of how quickly things can spiral out of control when long-standing grievances are left unresolved. As the fighting raged on, the world watched in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen over a football match. The Organization of American States stepped in, demanding an immediate ceasefire. Neighboring countries and global powers joined in, pressuring both sides to end the conflict. After just 100 hours of fighting, a ceasefire was agreed upon on July 20, 1969. But the damage had been done. Thousands were dead, many more were injured, and the two nations were left scarred by the violence. The ceasefire brought an end to the fighting, but not to the underlying issues. The displaced Salvadorans in Honduras faced continued persecution, and relations between the two countries remained tense for years. The war might have been over, but the bitterness lingered. A reminder that peace is fragile when deep-rooted conflicts are ignored. The war ended quickly, but the scars it left behind would take years to heal, showing that the real battle was far from over. The football war lasted just 100 hours, but its impact was felt for decades. Over 3,000 people lost their lives, and the conflict left both nations economically and socially weakened. But beyond the immediate destruction, the football war serves as a powerful lesson in how seemingly small events can trigger massive consequences. It's a reminder that when deep-seated issues are left unresolved, even a football match can become the spark that ignites a deadly fire. In the years following the war, football matches between El Salvador and Honduras were no longer just games. They were seen as potential triggers for violence, with the memory of the football war casting a long shadow. As we wrap up this story, let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons of the football war. It's a stark reminder that peace is not just the absence of war, but the resolution of the underlying issues that lead to conflict. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more of our content where we dive into other fascinating and often overlooked moments in history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, keep exploring the oddities of history.